have Her Excellency Secretary of Environment and Natural Resources from Mexico, Alicia Bárcena. Thank you for joining us. Minister, I want to ask you what different steps or measures stakeholders in the public, but also in the private sector, can take to close the political gender gap.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you and with this fantastic panel. I wanted to say, the first thing I want to say is that in Mexico we have a powerful breakthrough. It's the first time in 200 years that we have a woman president. And this is tremendous because it changes the whole, it's a paradigm shift altogether. So closing the political gap, I mean, it's very much connected to from my perspective, to building up the economic autonomy of women. When women have economic autonomy, it's easier for them to participate in many fronts. Because when they are dependent on economic terms, that's when they fall into corruption or dependency or even, they are abused in many ways. So from my perspective, the first thing we need to achieve is economic autonomy, parity on economic terms. For example, in Mexico, we still don't have that parity in salaries. We have to achieve it. But there has been a lot of advances in many fronts. Politically now, in Mexico, there is a law that guarantees that 50% of the Congress has to be by women. Women have to be in Congress, 50%. If there's no 50%, for example, if there's a male candidate, sorry for that won, but the next one is a woman, and in order to achieve parity, then the women takes the seat. And this is, I would say, this has been a positive law and assertive way, mechanisms to achieve parity. But the other part is the Supreme Court is also led by women, and also the central bank. So it has been really a total shift from a very, I would say, machista society. I don't know how to translate that, but a male-oriented society in Mexico. Can you imagine the guns and everything? And the movies are very clear on that. But then there has been such a shift, such a change in the mentality. Now little girls say, what do you want to be in the future? President. Never before, honestly. So this is something that politically has made a lot of a difference. Socially also, the Mexican president has been very, very assertive and very positive in creating policies to help women at all fronts. Because one of the main things that I think we have to achieve, for example, women don't have access to property rights in terms of land, for example, in many places, indigenous peoples. So we have to make so many things to make sure that women have access to finance, to political participation, to social participation, and it has to be done. There has to be political will. It's not going to be automatic. This is not automatic at all, and that's why it's so important that in the police or in security arena you have women. In the political arena you have women. Now in the private sector we are lagging behind, and I think it's not only Mexico. I think it's the world, because we do have a lot of women in the private sector, but at lower levels. It's not really yet, let's say, the direction or the decision makers that are at the top in the private sector. Once I made a question to a company, Starbucks, and I said to him, to the CEO in Latin America, I said to him, how many women do work in Starbucks? He didn't know. He didn't know at all. Okay, then he went back and came back and said, no, more than 60% women are working in Starbucks. And I said, okay, how many in the decision making? He didn't know. He went again and came back and said, well, I think there we have a problem. It's like 20%. That's the problem. So we need to engage in a different way with the private sector to make sure that women are also, able to reach the top, because otherwise we have to break the crystal ceiling, I think this is what we need.
I mean, the point of course, the private sector capability in reaching managerial level is tied into economic empowerment that then allows women to have more of a political role. And I wanted to ask you, you spoke about the mindset change, and congratulations on the election of your president. What do you think was instrumental in making that change, in getting people to accept? And if I can follow with that, do you worry that there can also be a backlash? Because sometimes what we see when there's this progressive step, there can be a backlash from those that feel that they may have lost out as a result.
Absolutely, and that's why, I mean, what she has gained, I mean, it was very difficult. Actually, she got the majority of votes, 35 million votes, which was historic in Mexico. And I think it has to do with the connection and the empathy at the local level, you know, but she has a double work because it's not like naturally accepted. So she has to do even better than men in many fronts to demonstrate that it's possible. So the challenge is there. She only has 4 months, but still, you know, she got 85% of approval in these 4 months. And I think that's a tremendous, but the challenge is there because men are just what men and the whole society is watching. And many times for women, it's more difficult because you have a double checking, you know, and also you have the care work that you have to do domestically, you know, you have to work, and then the other third of your day, you have to be in charge of your house. Unfortunately, that's still the case. I mean, men are fantastic. I have to say that in my case, I'm very fortunate, but you have to still look after the children and the schooling and the this and everything. So even the president, you know, there was unfortunately, one man from the news that asked her, well, but you are a, ¿cómo le dijo? You are a housewife. To her, she said, you are a president, but you still are a housewife. And she said, well, that's my privilege, and it's an honor for me to be a housewife and at the same time to be a president. But he was challenging her, you know? Yeah. This is the problem. There's still that mentality that women are not capable.
And often the mentality, by the way, is not restricted to men. There are many conservative women who actually question and can.
Even worse.
Yeah, and it feels worse when it comes from women.
You remember Madeleine Albright when she said there will be a place in hell for those women that do not help other women?
Yes.
That's the case.
Of course, we have two great ministers on this panel, and I want to ask about geopolitics, and in the geopolitical arena, the dynamic of making sure that there is this conversation about gender parity, but also thinking about how we can have a less divisive, perhaps, global context than we have at the moment, and the role that women can play with that. So if I can start with you, please, on that.
Well, thank you so much. Before being Minister of Environment, I was a Minister of Foreign Affairs. And I have to say that, and in the UN, my experience has been that women have a more empathy in terms of peacemaking, peace building. And the talent, both talents are necessary. I believe very much that parity is what we want. We don't want also only women or only men. I think we need both. And because there is complementary visions in many ways, and particularly in peacemaking, peace building, I really believe the intervention of women is extremely important to build the empathy, also to help other women that are the ones who suffer the most in the wars that we are living through. You can see what's happening around the world. Women are more vulnerable in many ways, with children too. So you do need this mix. So my belief is that we definitely need parity. Not more women or more men, but we need parity. And in some positions, for example, in terms of security, as you were saying, I think women do need to be there, definitely. In the military, for example, or in the, as I said, in the peacemakers or peace builders, we need women.
And questions really brief. Lady here and then the lady in the front.
Hello, my name is Charafaja Masingya. I'm a global shaper from Johannesburg. So my question is around the fact that a lot of the times when we speak about women, we assume a universal female experience. And I think, it's shaped by a lot of intersecting identities across class, race, geography, ability. And, you spoke about the quotas. And so what sort of policy approaches are being taken to ensure that those intersecting differentiating identities are sort of accounted for in terms of making sure that we are including those different identities of women. And also just...
Sorry,
sure.
please.
Thank you.
If you can please address the question about representation of different identities.
You know, I think that you made a very important point, and that is diversity. Because at the end of the day, it's not only about gender parity, but it's really about diversity within gender, of course. And all, you know, even LGBT, all these letters that I don't know them all, but you see, we need diversity. That's what we need. The more diverse is a society, the better. So it's gender parity indeed, but diversity within.